Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to minute 54 of the podcast Awake Minute by Minute. Today we are joined by Juanito. Juanito, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. Is my English-Spanish accent correct or not really?
No, it's pretty spot on, pretty good.
Mike, you're shaking your head. You want to add a German, English, Spanish.
You will always sound British, no matter what you say.
Juanito, tell us, when did you meet Guruji?
It was around 2013, and I had been searching actually for the Buddha. I found a documentary on the Buddha that I was really drawn to, and so my thought was to find a Buddhist monastery that spoke English or that I could relate to. And so I talked to a lot of friends about just meditation. Meditation really sparked an interest in me, and so one of my friends took me to the lake shrine, and he said, "I found a Buddhist monastery." and so we went to the lake shrine, and so and that's where I found Master, and I just fell in love with SRF and Guruji, and so I always like to say that the Buddha took me to my Guru.
Well, it's by accident, isn't it, really? Because your friend thought it was a Buddhist monastery.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think that's the first time we've heard an accident. Someone falls into the path through an accident. And yeah. Have you taken Kriya?
I have, yes. I joined as soon as I found the lake shrine and I found Guruji. I started the lessons, and back then there wasn't that many things online, so I went on YouTube and I just researched anything I could find about him, and I was just drawn to Master, and I was drawn to the concept of God as the Divine Mother, and I think that's one of the things I love about Guruji the most, is this loving, embracing Divine Mother, and so I signed up for the lessons, and eventually I got my Kriya at convocation, and it's just been very beautiful, and I've been very grateful to Master for this beautiful journey.
Blessings.
Yes.
How did you find the Awake, the Life of Yogananda film, especially in comparison to the autobiography of a yogi, for example?
How did I find it? So I remember watching it at convocation the first time they previewed it, and one of the most striking things that that stood out to me is in the autobiography, Guruji doesn't talk about his struggles. He talks about his experiences with the different saints and his journey, but he didn't really talk about the heartache that's mentioned in Awake. And so to me, that was so beautiful, because it was the humility of his love, that he didn't want to focus on that. And so Awake gave me a deeper appreciation for Guruji, that not only did he bring these teachings, but that he really did struggle with, the times. And so I found the Awake to be a more intimate look into the Guru, and one that brought me more gratitude for what he did and what he had to deal with to give us this beautiful teachings, and SRF, the founding of SRF.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the themes actually we focus quite heavily on during our podcast, because lots of things people don't know about. So it's been quite a journey for us to discover some of that, hasn't it, Mike? Unless you have any questions, Mike, for Juanito, we can move on to the minute.
Let's get into it.
Sure. We've lost Chris. We think some sort of animal may have chewed through his broadband line in the Amazon rainforest. We don't know. He'll come in and out anyway. He'll come in and out. So this minute, let me give you a quick run through this minute. We have Robert Love at the start, and Robert Love talks about the types of devotees that approach or that come to Yogananda. Devotees such as Juanito has just mentioned. By the way, we know Juanito because we're starting our Grahastha Sangha, which is different to the young adult Sangha because it's for the slightly older age group. So still in the embryonic stages. So watch this space. But talking about Grihasthas, prominent businessmen, he says, judges, lawyers, etc., joined, and even hardened journalists. Perhaps even the same journalists that gave him such a hard time through all his critical, all of his lawsuits and other things like that. Then Brother Chidananda talks about it was very, something different was beginning. A small core group of devotees. They come to Yogananda and accept the monastic vows, which is quite new, really. Probably in the 1930s, it's quite new in the West. I mean, Swami Vivekananda was there a couple of decades before that, and some of his monks came across to India from India to America. But now Yogananda here is establishing a whole new monastic order of American devotees and American monks, which is probably a first. Stand to be corrected. I don't know if you guys have any opinion on that, but this is probably a first. And then we see lots of lovely videos of these said devotees joining, and we're going to talk in detail about those devotees. And then we have obviously Brother Chidananda talking about James Lynn, and we won't speak too much about James Lynn because we want to talk about these lovely devotees that came to the path and the monastic order that they kind of joined and how that would have impacted America back then. But James Lynn, if you want to hear more about him, that is, of course, Rajarsi Janakanada. And we discuss him in glorious high definition detail in minute 30, which you can refer to. Mike, reflections on that?
Yeah, about the core group of disciples that now gathered around, how Rajarsi says it. I think this is the core attitude, spirit of SRF, even until this day, right? That it's not going out and going for the glory or going for the high amount of audience. They more go for the people who are actually devoted and for the people who actually are looking for God. And I feel like, I'm not sure if there was the shift actually there in Guruji's attitude, but it's portrayed like this in the movie. And if it is, then this is basically, I feel like, the attitude that SRF kept ever since then.
Interesting. And I'd suppose that you might say it's quality versus quantity. But I suppose everyone probably thinks that same thing. But yeah, Chris.
It reminds me of the time earlier in the documentary or film that Yogananda, we talked about him having a vision, seeing many faces in the West, and he said, "Oh, these people are Americans," and we thought, well, how would he know this? Well, it was maybe the dress, it's the garb, it's the what they're doing. They're he's saying maybe streets or something. The business that the Americans typically would have had. I just wondered, would he simply have seen many of the devotees that would have come to him, the ones that would eventually turn monks and things like this, and it has a feeling of peace and tranquility this minute for me. Maybe just after all the turmoil of the last few minutes that we've went through with him on the journey, this seems like a very grounding moment, and it seems like almost a moment of clarity that it was somewhat inevitable, or there's some kind of fate, and Guruji had to go through these trials and tribulations that he's been through to get to this stage, and it's a really firm grounding. So many people came to him in these times that really helped him establish the SRF. So whether or not he really fully sort of knew the variety of people that would have come at this time and the numbers. But for me, it seems like it's somewhat fate, and it kind of was destined to happen in some ways.
Yes, that's a very good question, especially to ask for this minute, because we're going to reflect on a few of his close disciples that we see in the minute, and we're going to answer that question directly, hopefully, for you. But before we do that, Juanito, what are your reflections on this minute? Did you enjoy it?
I did, and so I so appreciate the podcast, because I watched the Awake yesterday all over again, and I was watching some of it this morning, and right before this minute, like Chris said, Guruji had gone through a lot, and so what stood out to me was the humility. And Dayama shares that, Guruji drew these disciples, this small group of disciples, and then she said that one of them was her. And just the way she said it, and then just kind of carried on into the minute, was this humility, this reverence, this sweetness. And I think that's what this core small group of disciples, though they were small, they were very much large, beautiful souls, yet they were so humble in their love and the reverence for the Guru. And that's what resonated with me in that particular moment as I watched the minute, just that humility of love.
Yes, and that's what we're going to focus on, actually. A few we're going to pick out the lives of a few of those, those grainy, blurry pictures that we see, those humble devotees in those images. We're going to talk about them in some detail. But it's interesting, Juanito, that you mentioned, Daya Mata in the previous minute, saying one of them was me, because Juanito, ladies and gentlemen, has not seen the previous minute where we discussed Sri Daya Mata for 2 hours, and that was one of the things we talked about, Juanito. Wow. So you are very well in tune. Very well in tune indeed. So let us talk about firstly, there's a whole group of, say, I don't know, probably like 12 people next either side of Guruji. And we're going to just pick out a few of those people, prominent people. And so in the book, Awake book, we see that from left to right, there is a lady called Virginia Wright, who is Ananda Mata, who is Sri Daya Mata's sister. And we have Faye Wright, which is obviously we know, is Daya Mata. Then next to her, we have Richard Wright, the tall gentleman next to Guruji, who we know as brother of Daya Mata and Ananda Mata. And we have Sister Gyanamata, looking serene next to Guruji on the right-hand side. Then we have Durga Mata, Florina Darling, her previous name was, and we'll talk a little bit about her. Then we have Margaret Lancaster, who is Saila Sutta Mata, and Orpha Sali, which is Sraddha Mata. So those are those beautiful people that are shown there. Interestingly, we also have lots of other videos there's actually separate images and separate videos that are used, but I think they're set in a different time. They're not all at the same time, but they've brought this footage together to make it feel like a varied set of images. So before we start talking about each of those, what I'll do is I'll put a link. There's a lovely Wikipedia page about all the disciples of Guruji that people have made, and I'll put that on our description for you. So firstly, let's talk about Ananda Mata. So Ananda Mata, Mike, if you open that card. So she is obviously Daya Mata's sister, and she was born in 1915 to 2005. Do you want to read that out, Mike?
Yeah. Ananda Mata, one of the earliest and closest disciples of Paramahansa Yogananda, and sister of our late president Sri Daya Mata, left her physical form on February 5th, 2005, Though she served Paramahansaji and his work for many decades, her role was by choice, one behind the scenes, rather than as public speaker or teacher. Brother Ananda Moy said this at her funeral. Brother was working on plastering and decor at Mother Center and took a break and witnessed something special as he saw Ananda Ma take the phone.
So Chris, do you want to carry on?
No, I am not a person who is inclined to visions or phenomenal experiences. I have never been interested in that kind of thing. But as I saw Ananda Ma taking the telephone, to my utter amazement, I saw light all around her, a whole sphere of light. It became brighter and brighter, and I thought, what is going on? And then I saw Ananda Ma's form change. She became the most incredibly beautiful divine being. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And this was not just a flash. It lasted several minutes. Then gradually the light faded, and that divine being once again became Ananda Mata. And she hung up the phone and went back into the office.
So a very mundane scenario here. Brother Ananda Moy is just doing some work and he sees this glorious vision, and it's just phenomenal because ordinarily you just see, you know, Ananda Ma, you can imagine her being like this behind the scenes person that doesn't really talk very much, but she gets, you know, she does her work. She doesn't like take services and do chants, but she is this, you know, this divine mother bee. And then Brother Ananda Moy just sees this beautiful vision. I mean, can you imagine? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, it's like you get to peek behind the scenes a little bit. You know, you do your work and work with all those people, and then suddenly this person right in front of you just starts glowing, and you're like, what's going on, right? And it seems to run in the family, right? Because last episode we talked about the story that Shyamananda saw Daya Mata do something similar, right, in Puri. So
yes.
I guess very, very blessed sisters.
Yes. Chris?
It's reminding me of a story in the Bible that essentially was saying, you know, be kind to everyone that you meet. And I think it was something about welcoming people into your home, and maybe you guys know the story better off the top of your heads, but because you never know who they are. You know, they might be the angels, and this kind of reminds me of this story to a degree. You know, ultimately we all might be, you know, angels, and just ignorant of that, and we can, you know, some can shine and show it more than others, but it just reminds me of that story in the Bible. That's so beautiful, just to treat every person who you meet like that, because maybe hidden behind the veil of this physical form is this beautiful celestial being.
Yeah, the thing is, our spiritual eyes, or certainly mine, is not yet open to see if I'm walking past an avatar. I mean, I would hope that I notice, but you know, it could have happened. And you know, I think Sadhguru in a recent video, he like talked about like he was in a street market in India, and there was a fully self-realized tea seller, or like a fruit and vegetable seller, and they looked into each other's eyes, both realizing, you know, who each other are. And he's like, they just carried on about their business, and this is just everyone's walking past this guy, you know, trading with him, and he's like a simple peasant, but he's like a realized master. Yeah, Mike.
I think you're in good company, Priyank. Remember Swami Shri Yukteswar when he met Babaji, and Babaji didn't want him to realize who he is, right? So he's like, oh, I met this young man. He was very friendly and everything. And then Lahiri Mahasaya was like, dude, you talked to Babaji.
Yeah, and this was obviously the case for Ananda brother, Ananda boy as well, because he just thought Ananda Ma was just a regular devotee. Doesn't she's not prominent, but look at her spiritual stature. But yeah, that's a good example, Mike. It makes me feel better because Sri Yukteswar is an avatar. Before his realization, he couldn't see. So who am I, Chris?
Going back to your story, Priyank, with Sadhguru, I think that story is quite funny because the interaction there between the two, I believe, was Sadhguru saying like, "Why are you working here? Selling vegetables?" And the response was, "Well, I got really," or selling. I think he was he? I don't know if he was selling meat or he was selling something that was a bit strange. And then he said, "Well, I got really sick recently from eating something that I shouldn't have, and through my sickness and ill health, I became self-realized. I kind of had this awakening experience." Yeah. And then what he said was every time he's giving something to people, he's wishing illness on them so that they would actually have the same experience and go through some kind of inward journey to become, this realized being. And there was some kind of joke about that. He was giving blessings to people, unbeknownst to them, something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. In the previous minute, we talked. One of our titles of the minutes was sometimes tragedies can be blessings, right?
Yeah.
And certainly that in the case of this fruit vendor, that was the case. He was struck with some illness, and that became his source of inspiration and enlightenment, which is quite inspiring, isn't it? Which would actually, this is relevant for when we talk about Sister Gyanamata a bit later. But Ananda Moy carries on his story. He says, "Years afterwards, I read a book of legends about Lord Krishna, which said that when God incarnates on earth as an avatar, there are always some divine beings who volunteer to come with that incarnation. And it is said that great rishis and sages of the past incarnated to be Krishna's companions. They were among the gopis or cowherds who played with the boy Krishna as he grew up in Vrindavan. And there is very strong rumors that one of those companions, one of those Arjuna himself, was Paramahansa Yogananda amongst self-realization fellowship circles. We obviously don't know how much of that is true, but you would not be surprised, would you? Chris, your hand is up for no reason.
Oh, sorry, I think that was before, but actually, I would like to jump in. Similarities to the sweetness of both of those, let's say, characters, personalities, in Yogananda's words and Arjuna's. Yeah, I've never heard that before, but that's interesting.
Juan, did you see the email that I sent about the reading?
I did, about Gyanamata.
Yes. No, not that one. No, not that one. I'll come to that one. Ananda Moy carries on, and he says, later on, when I heard that she was getting worse physically, I was invited to come up to her room and to say goodbye. She couldn't talk anymore, but she talked with her eyes and with her hands. She took both of my hands in hers and looked at me with the utter love. It was an incredible experience. And then, knowing how much she loved Master, I said to her, Master is waiting for you. And in response to that, I felt a tremendous wave of love and joy, as if she were expressing, I'm going to be with Master again. So wow. those were her last days. So interesting, because her and Daya Mata spent the vast majority of their lives together. So it was quite a beautiful experience that they had, I suppose. And we're going to talk about Sri Daya Mata's kind of affections or relationship with her at the very end of this minute. So watch this space. Mike.
It's just such a different way to look at passing away when you know Guruji is waiting on the other side for you, isn't it? It isn't, I mean, you're losing someone, but first of all, as the person who loves them in this plane, you can say they're going to be with Guruji. And for the person passing away, they say, I'm going to be with Guruji. So I feel like there's such tremendous ease in the feeling. Is just so much easier to handle, and it's actually a joyous feeling rather than one of sadness.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. And it offers a lot of solace and comfort to us all, doesn't it? And it's much needed, because death is such a jarring experience for most of us. So yes, now let us talk about Sister Gyanamata. Mike, do you want to read the first section?
Guruji said of Sister Daya Mata in 1940, after her passing, "Of all women I have met in America, I think the one who has found highest favor with God is Sister Gyanamata." 11 years later, at her funeral service in Encinitas, California, he declared, "A great saint has gone away, but she has left spiritual footprints for all souls that are in despair, that they might trace her footsteps to my Father's home. Those spiritual footprints will always be here." A great saint, one of the foremost disciples of a God-illumined master, yet one whose exalted life was lived in relative obscurity, who was this humble soul who found such favor with God.
Yes, he talked often. Guruji talked about her as being his most advanced disciple, right? Chris?
Their first meeting. I see myself coming down the years, from the days when I was an unhappy little Canadian girl, to that day when I saw standing before me a Hindu Swami in the ochre robe of renunciation, the answer to my prayers and longing. All had led up to that moment. I asked myself sometimes, should he come again with what words would I welcome him? I know that again there would be the same silence, with no words at all except, "Bless me that I may realize God." Gyanamata often told of the instant recognition between guru and disciple at the first treasured moment. They meditated together. Then Paramahansaji told her that she had been one of his disciples in a previous incarnation. Recognizing the spiritual receptivity Gyanamata had attained through her efforts in past lives, the Guru was able at the first meeting to give her the direct experience of God and the great Amen or Om, the creative cosmic vibration. Years later, she wrote to him, "Do you remember my taking you upstairs to my room when you came to my house in Seattle? Silently, you looked at my pictures of holy men, and then turning your back to the long row of windows, you prayed for me very softly and gave me my first blessing, the one that enabled me to hear the Om. After that, as long as I remained in Seattle, a vase of orange flowers, sometimes fresh blossoms and sometimes artificial ones, stayed on the floor to mark the spot where you had stood."
What an absolutely stunning description of devotion. Sister Gyanamata met Guruji when she was quite on in her years, and she was married and she had children. So she couldn't do what Ananda Mata and Daya Mata did, which was basically you see your master, you have this beautiful experience, and you just leave, you drop everything and leave it behind. She had to very much carry on in this in her world, because that she was fulfilling her duty there. Mike?
I find this so interesting when a super advanced devotee like Gyanamata, it reminds me a bit of Lahiri Mahashai, when they meet their master late in their life. So they have like 30, 40 years to live, and they live it without, I mean, I'm not sure, I have not made that experience yet, but the way it sounds like they live their life without knowing God, without being able to go into cosmic consciousness. And they live basically normal lives. And then after all this time, suddenly it all changes in one day. Like she meets Guruji, he is able to give her an experience the first time they meet, and then I guess from there, yeah, I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, isn't it? It's strange. It's God puts you in strange position sometimes, isn't he? And certainly that's the case for Sri Daya Mata, because Sri Daya Mata had a very, very difficult life. Like she had difficult
Gyanamata.
Sorry, Sister Gyanamata. Who did I say? Daya Mata.
Yeah.
Gyanamata. So she had, like, for example, she had a lot of health problems. She had like anemia, diseases in terms of like blood cell problems, gastrointestinal problems, nervous dispositions, kidney problems, arthritis. There was so many things she had problems with, and obviously she was such an advanced soul, and such that she had this spiritual experience, quite similar to Daya Mata when she literally just first met him in Seattle when Guruji was doing his transcontinental tour, and he met her, and she had to wait to see him again. I think another year she had to wait. But I think there's a story where like people after Gyanamata passed away, they asked people asked like why, for such an advanced disciple or such an advanced person such as she is, why does she have like such a hard life? Like, why does she have to go through so much if she's so advanced? And I think Guruji said before she took this birth, she asked to take on a lot more, take all this on in this incarnation. So this was her choice to have this difficult life. And I'll probably butchered the story. If someone's got a link to this story, please put it on there. But it was such a beautiful beautiful thought, because she had we all have the choice, don't we? How hard do you want this incarnation to be? Do you want it to be plain sailing? Do you want it to be harmonious? But then you'll have to come back 10,000 more times, or do you want to come back just once and then really struggle? And
doesn't Guruji say somewhere how an incarnation without any problems is like a wasted incarnation?
Yes,
or a life with a
a harmonious life is not a victorious life. Is that the one?
Yeah,
something along those lines. Yes, absolutely. And then Juanito, please.
I there's something that keeps coming to my mind right now that I heard a devotee tell me recently, and it's a quote from Guruji about how God tests the disciple that he loves the most with a lot of trials. And so just to think that not only did she take that on, but that she had to endure so much, and then to meet her guru, like not only her love was so great, but just God's love for her, and the guru's love for her was so great. And you had mentioned earlier when she passed away, something that actually helped me personally was I was grieving a friend that I care for very much, and so I was sort of seeking permission in the teachings to grieve. And I found the story of when Gyanamata passed away. Master was really sad, and someone asked him, "Why are you sad? You are with her and God. You're an avatar." And he said, "I'm with her now on the other side, but on this side, it hurts very much," something like that. And so it just spoke to their relationship, to just that back and forth, the love that she had for him and the love that he had for her as a disciple, as a guru to the disciple. and how beautiful that that bond was, how precious that is, you know, and was and is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I might have that quote actually a bit later, so we'll come back to that.
Nice. Always in tune. Always in tune.
Also, you know, one of her books people are encouraged to read, which is where we got all this text from, is God Alone, which are basically excerpt. Yes, that is the one, Mike. Which people, you know, just excerpts of her letters and things people have recorded about her, but it's an absolutely beautiful book, as Mike will attest to. That looks like a very old copy, Mike.
Yeah, it's my mom's. So.
Wow, that is an old copy.
There's still notes from her inside.
Oh, wow, that is so beautiful, beautiful. Yes, so that God Alone, I believe it's named that way because she had a picture with, was it embroidered, or like, was it a picture or a painting that just said God Alone, you know, in a frame? And each year Gyanamata reaffirmed that motto by inscribing the date of the anniversary of her monastic vows on the back of it. And she signed it to remind her of that, you know. And in her later years, she wrote to Paramahansa, the words that hang above my head, God alone, are there because I took a vow not to forget my goal, even for a moment, and never to let anything come between you and me. I never have. You are the pole star of my life.
Nice.
Yeah. Yes. So there's also something else I wanted to read out. I was thinking of something that was coming into my life that filled me with apprehension. So there's another famous quote, and this is the background of it. So I was thinking of something, this is Gyanamata, of something that was coming into my life that filled me with apprehension. I knew that this is not the will of God, that I should be saved from the experience. Even at that moment, it was moving towards me. Suddenly, God told me the prayer he would listen to, and I said quickly, change no circumstance of my life.
Myself.
Change me. So change no circumstance of my life, change me. What an absolutely phenomenal prayer. That, you know, there's, you know, the Bhagavad Gita has got some phenomenal, you know, texts that Krishna says, but this one, if it was in there, if Arjuna had said this, you would not be surprised. You just think that that's what should be there, right? What a stunning thing that we can all live to, and it's so simple. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And this prayer made a difference in my life, and I know so many people who would say the same thing, because not only is it a powerful prayer, but it also changes completely the attitude that you have towards a problem, right? It doesn't say, you know, life has been so unfair to me. It actually says, whatever life does to me, it doesn't matter, because I live for God, and those experiences that come, they are here to teach me how to become a better devotee. And just changing this attitude in yourself already is very healing, and it shows so much devotion.
Yes. Juan, do you want to read out?
Yes.
Oh yeah, please. You finish what you want to say, and then you can read out your section.
Okay. Yes, of course. I thank you. I'm glad Mike mentioned that, because that's the what I was feeling is that this quote is so transforming, and we tend to resist when something that we are going through or we're struggling with that we don't want to deal with. We resist it. We negate, and we say even like, why me, or why God, you know. And so the human nature of to resist, but it's such a liberating quote, and just the thought of surrender, you know, just to surrender, and then it makes all the difference, and it transforms the whole experience. And I just I love that quote so much, and I go to it often as well when I have something that I'm struggling with, just to remember that if I just surrender, and then that I ask to, change me, not the circumstance. It makes a whole difference. So I'm very, very happy you brought this up, and that Mike mentioned it. So I'll read the part that you sent to me.
Chris has got a point before that.
Yeah.
Go, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm reading, going over the lessons and reading, I think it's lesson 43, I believe it is, and it talks of resisting temptations. And this is something that Guruji talks a lot about, is don't focus on changing others, change your own ignorance and mistaken ways. So if anybody wants to go back to this subject and is a lesson student, just to remind you, that's where it is, because I'm reading those at the moment, so it's apt just to mention.
And you're talking about, of course, the old format lessons.
The old format lessons, correct? Yeah,
because it doesn't go 43 anymore.
Oh,
Chris
yeah,
is Chris is old school. He likes vintage Daya Mata. Juan, please.
Yes. Okay. So I'll read. It says, indeed, those who knew her claimed that Gyanamata lived in his vibration throughout the remaining 20 years of her life, demonstrating a unique attunement to her guru. She mentally followed him as he carried the self-realization teachings from city to city, country to country, all around the world, until she came to feel that inwardly there was no separation between them. She once wrote him, "For 16 years, I have followed you from point to point. Until now, I do not feel your absence at all. For where you are, there I am also, always standing invisibly before you, humbly and patiently awaiting the moment when I will receive a word and a smile from you. Distance was no barrier. No matter how many miles separated them, whenever the guru would send a special inner blessing to her, she would feel it, recognize it as coming from him, and would write him a letter of gratitude. Sometimes she would sign her letters to him with her name, Gyanamata of Yogananda, an affirmation of her love and attunement with her guru."
Pause there, Chris.
Yeah.
Do you know, listening to this, it spurs a memory that there's been reoccurring moments in my life since taking on a guru and being in a relatively closed social network where gurus don't exist. And many people, if I have mentioned it at all to them, friends and family, would kind of raise an eyebrow or cock a head a little bit like, guru, what does this mean? What is your, what is your relationship with this guru, and what are his intentions? And it's these kind of conversations. And I suppose just to maybe throw it out there for conversation, maybe briefly, I know we've talked about it in previous minutes, but what is the relationship with the guru? Like, why is it that there's such devotion, such borderline fanaticism from a third party? They people might think, God, you're just crazy, like following this person. Like, who is this person? Why do you believe so much in this person? But the relationship is so intimate and difficult to describe to people who aren't initiated and devoted in such a way. And there's this magnetism, I suppose, is the way that I can describe it. Love magnetism, that you're just drawn and just connected to your guru in a way that goes beyond words, and you have full trust and full faith, and you're fully committed to this relationship. And just hearing these words, hearing this faith and commitment coming from one when he's reading this, and it's just triggering these things that it's very difficult to describe to people who aren't on this path, who haven't done that inward soul search and demanded that they be given a guru indirectly or directly, and one is presented, when this the teacher appears. So I just wanted to kind of throw out there, to see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, as I think you put it well there, when your yearning is so strong. They think there's a famous saying that you don't go looking like for a guru, like don't go outside searching for one. Just increase your yearning and your devotion, and the guru then will make himself available to you, which I think is a powerful concept, because I made the mistake of, when I was in India, going around searching from ashram to ashram and for a guru. Yeah, when I was 19.
You my guru.
20. And interestingly, I was reading the autobiography of a yogi whilst doing it. Mike.
I love that concept. When she says every time she found Guruji was like sending her a little blessing, or she found that in her life he would do something, that she would immediately write him a letter.
Yeah.
I feel like, isn't that how our lives are sometimes? You know, you feel like you got a little blessing from the Guruji, and if he was in his form, you would just write him a letter and just say, thank you, Guruji, for this, you know? I find that I sometimes use my journal for that, and just when I feel like something like this has happened. And she had this life relationship, right? He was there, and of course she was a perfect disciple as well. So for her, and she had this perfect intuition. So those things probably happened all the time. And I mean, this book is like a collection of all the letters she wrote, right? So very sweet relationship they had.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic reason to have a journal. Probably the best reason, if you just chronicle those little moments of Guruji disciple, moments of inspiration, and if you fill up just a few pages, if you just fill up a few pages, that's enough fuel to keep you going in the darker times that each of us go through, you know, when our faith is perhaps not as strong as it usually is, or if we're going through a tough trial where we're questioning or we're doubting, you know, the grace that's in our lives. So it's very, very beneficial. Yes, Juan, please carry on.
Yes.
Speaking about death.
Yeah, so she says, sister was so humble and considerate. We called one of the younger sister disciples, that anytime Guruji would come into the room, she would approach him, touch his feet, and depart. I once asked her, sister, why do you leave when master comes in? And she said, I don't want ever to give him the slightest cause to feel that he must give me any notice. I don't ever want him to feel that he must utter one word to me. Did you ever hear such humility? Such was her attunement and reverence for the Guru.
Absolutely so phenomenal, isn't it?
Yes.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Yes.
Because you know, people always run after a guru and try and seek personal counsel and you know, all these things. And Guruji often says, you know, ask and have all your questions answered in meditation. And Guruji was, you know, around, physically available to, you know, answer any of her queries, and she wouldn't even stay in the same room. She would not only would she, you know, let others take that need, you know, take that opportunity, but she then using that opportunity for her own spiritual unfoldment as well, which is quite a beautiful thing, isn't it? I just thought it was such a powerful concept, that that element. And then so we're talking about death. Let's talk about Gyanamata's death now, or her parting from this plane. So I'll just read out some sections. Another of Self-Realization Fellowship nuns was present when Gyanamata spoke her last words. They came a short while before her passing. She said, Sister's face was radiant. A big smile illumined her face as she exclaimed, what joy, what joy, too much joy. And within an hour or so, she was gone. I remember well that last day, one of the nuns came to Master and said, "Sister's condition is very bad." So Master went in immediately to see her. She was sitting in her chair at the time. Master said something to her and stayed with her for some time, blessing her. Most of the time, they said nothing to each other. We knew that he was communing with her soul. Then he said to a few of us, "Now come, let us go for a drive." Guruji had told us that Divine Mother would never let him be in the room when one of the devotees passed away, or one of his loved ones as well, because that happened with Sri Yukteswar, and his mother as well. And thus it happened that he was never physically present when any disciple left the body. So we drove around Encinitas and nearby community for about an hour. None of us spoke. Our minds were with Sister. Master sat absolutely motionless. He was meditating deeply. When we entered the hermitage, one of the nuns came up to him and said, "Gyanamata has just left her body." Master was very quiet and withdrawn. Finally, he whispered, "Yes," and went reverently into her room. We all remained at a respectful distance outside the door. He spent some time with her there, in silence, blessing her. We heard him whisper, "Sister, you went before me." After a while, he motioned for us to come into the room. Quietly, we entered and approached Sister's body. With solemnity in his voice, he asked us to feel the temperature of her feet. They were very cold. Then he said, "Now I want you to feel the top of her head." This was remarkable. It was very hot, as if on fire. Master explained to us, "This shows that she has left the body in the highest state of samadhi. Her soul departed through the highest spinal center, the 1,000-petaled lotus in the brain. Now she has achieved that final state of mukti, or liberation. She is free. She has no need to return to this world, but we will meet again." After that, Master said to us, "You must know that her passing symbolizes that I will be leaving this world shortly." And then less than 4 months later, Guruji left his body.
Wow.
So, yes, what an absolutely inspiring story. With some parallels to some Shakespeare plays that we won't go into. But it's stunning, absolutely stunning. What a lovely kind of narrative and lovely like display of devotion between them, like a selfless love that just kind of encaptured everyone at Mother Center, and inspired us even to this day. I don't think there probably isn't a sweeter relationship, I don't think, than that between Guruji and Sister Gyanamata. Could be corrected. Mike?
Yeah, I just noticed the real change in vibe from last minute or the 2 minutes ago to now, where he was still in Mexico thinking about dear Ananda leaving the ashram, organization crumbling, to now he has all those sweet souls and they came in abundance now. You have can take a big group shot full of disciples that don't spend their whole life just for his organization, and then he has such sweet connections with people that he even, when one of them passes away, he says, "Okay, my work here is done. I will also leave soon." It just shifted, made a 180 in a very short time, and turned completely into this direction of building this loving hive of self-realization for everybody.
Yes. Yes, Juanito.
Yeah, I agree, and I felt that yesterday when I was watching it, and this morning, and even the music they used, and just the voice of Daya Mata. But I think what I'm as you were reading, I had not heard or read what you just shared, and so I just feel the reverence for the soul, from from Gyanamata to master, and then from master to her. That bond, that beautiful bond, that was more than just this, here in this physical realm. And thank you for reading that. It was so beautiful, and I am so grateful. And I said it before. One of the most healing things that Guruji ever gave me was just these little blessings of how to cope with death, because being a devotee, we always want to be happy, and we always want to be in this positive mindset and whatnot, and in those moments, when you're going through something such as losing someone you love deeply, you almost feel that you don't have the right to grieve that deeply, and so to find that Guruji so loved her that even God, he would go away until she transitioned, so that he would not be there at that moment, but then that he would come back, and it just it's just so beautiful to me. And it just and again, to me, it's like my guru telling me it's okay, it's okay that you're sad, and it's okay that you've lost someone you love, and here's an example of how I dealt with it. And so even in that there's this beautiful lessons of Guruji's teachings, that they really are how to live teachings. We really do get everything from birth to to ascension and death. And I so love the relationship, and I am so grateful that through this podcast I'm having this connection with her even more. So thank you for that.
Yes, we're all blessed. It's funny how even all these small things in our lives can take us towards or closer to Guruji. We didn't think that this podcast would be as well. I didn't anyway, as useful as it has been for this endeavor and this goal, but it has certainly been a beautiful journey inward and closer to Master. I don't know if that's the same for you, Mike and Chris.
Sure.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, it is absolutely. I think whenever we first sort of said initially, like, well, why are we doing this? And we give our little statements to say, well, it's because we want to get together as a group, which was great, as well as talk about Guruji and relive some of the moments that he had when he was in the physical plane. But I think some of the concerns that we were talking to each other about was, what's the content going to be like as we continue throughout the various minutes, in the later minutes. And it's just funny, we always joke like, oh, it might be a short minute, and then we get into it and there's just so much there's just so much to talk about in every single minute, that there's moments that trigger conversations that you could spend hours talking about, and we have to just try to cut it down to some reasonable time to respect the listeners. But I personally love every moment that we're covering in these conversations. They really are blessings, for sure.
Indeed. So the next soul along the line, we won't talk about Richard Wright. We'll save that for the India episodes when Guruji goes to India. For the next soul along the list is Durga Mata is there. Durga Mata was previously known as Florina Darling, and she was also a very advanced devotee. And the one of the most beautiful things about Durga Mata in my mind is her very inspiring voice and her chanting style. So I thought, let's change this one up a little bit. Let me play you her voice. Let me know what you think, and then we'll perhaps hear a short snippet of her chanting.
And I would like to read you something, just a few lines, something Master wrote. You are lucky more than millions of people because it requires a definite state of evolution to even respond to these teachings of the masters. Now, isn't that encouraging for us? All the masters knew that we had to quicken our evolution. They have devised many techniques which you are all getting, and one of the methods is chanting.
Chanting, indeed. What a beautiful voice she has, right? And what a lovely devotional diction she has when she's speaking. I think it's pretty unique. You just want to hear more and more of her, don't you? So let me quickly play you her chanting style.
My Krishna is blue, the tamarind tree is blue. My Krishna is blue, the tamarind tree is blue. So I do love thee, tamarind tree. So I do love thee, tamarind tree. And when I die, oh mother, do put me high on the branch of the tamarind tree. And when I die.
Very powerful. And similar to Master, because musically she doesn't stay within the rules of what we know to be professional music and timing, but it does not matter, does it? The goal is to inspire and to take you closer to God, and both Guruji and the Durga Mata, I think probably more than any other nun is capable of doing that so effortlessly in her voice and her singing style. Chris?
I don't know about anybody else, but I had my hair standing on end in my head. It's still there. Yeah, it just raised that energy instantly.
Mike is pointing to it, of which there is
and it's just so great. Chanting is such a I don't know. I want to say it's overlooked at times, but it's such a powerful way when done with good devotion that we heard there. So thanks for playing that clip. That's great.
Sure, no problem. So let's move on. You guys can read about Durga Mata on the yogananda.org website more if you wish to. So first, I was going to talk about so all these lovely disciples devoted their lives the entirety of their lives to Guruji and the work. In Durga Mata's case, she did it kind of differently, perhaps, to the others. But how can we do the same thing? So Durga Mata is a good example, actually, isn't it? Because she had to carry on her responsibilities as a wife, as a loyal wife, as a mother, but her heart and her mind was never away from Guruji, was it? And that is quite inspiring. And she dedicated. I'd imagine she became even more effective in what she was doing in her other walks of life. If she loved, she would love more deeply now after this beautiful experience she had with Guruji when she met him. And I would like to think that I can also do the same thing in my life, even though I'm not a monk, but I volunteer in various capacities at the center, at Yogananda Seva, and in a lot of other walks, even at work. I think, for example, if I'm working, I don't think that it's just for that pound and the pounds in my bank. It's for the goal is for a much higher purpose, and it's all part of my spiritual unfoldment. So yeah, Chris?
Yeah, I'm sure we all know Guruji's mentioned, you wrote in the lessons that there's a difference when people give up, let's say, material wealth, or give up relationships, or give up their life and livelihood to go into the monastic path and true devotion there, and life given up on them, and they kind of have nothing left, let's say, and then they kind of fall into that life and say, oh, look how great I am. There's a very big difference in the two. I can't recall the monks' names specifically, but I just want to mention, there's a lot of inspiration with a lot of the, direct disciples and monks in SRF order, and many of them have given up a lot, and one monk in particular gave up a lot of family wealth and a lot of opportunities, within, let's say, a career path, and went into the monastic order. And I just think that there's so many inspirational stories from the various monks in the, in SRF, and you just love to hear every single one of them, because they're so inspirational. So all the interactions that, whether I've seen monks in real life in the London Centre, in face-to-face, or see them talking through the various channels that the SRF has, they're just, every single one of them are special and inspirational. So you're talking about favorite moments here, but favorite interactions, but I don't have one. But all of them are just so special, so valuable.
Mike?
It reminds me of two things. One of them is one piece of wisdom from Swami Shri Yukteswar in the autobiography, where he goes like, he sometimes sees people, their wives have left them, they ran out of money, and then they go like, I'm going to renounce everything and become a monk. They have not renounced anything. What are you going to renounce if you don't have anything? All the things have renounced him, right? And the other thing is that I've heard that many times of people who join the ashram, that it's not a refuge for people who find the world too difficult, or too because the ashram is not an easy way of life, because it constantly confronts you with your inner battle, right? You are going to have to work on your ego a lot in there, and if you are not strong, then you won't make it in there. And all the monks that I have met, they are inspiring examples of how to live a victorious life on the plain of Kurukshetra. And that's why I admire all of them. And I think if they would be out in the world playing a part, they would all be successful out there.
Chris?
Can I just say it's worth mentioning Lahiri Maheshaya here? Because when I first really heard his story, like I feel a really strong connection with Lahiri Maheshaya, and similarly connecting to what we've said previously in this minute, that maybe he lived a life and was brought in and had this interaction with Babaji, and kind of it all, let's say, came flooding back in, these previous lives that he's had, and was rather it was a rather imminent change for him, right? From one life, let's say, to delving into another. And he was this homely man, had a family and a career and so forth, so on and so forth. And it was a really good example for us and for everyone, that the spiritual life can be balanced with the kind of physical worldly life of having a family and responsibilities that way. So anytime I think about this and a monastic life, I can't help but think of Lahiri Maheshaya. So worth noting. It's not quite a direct disciple of Guruji, but it's inspirational. I suppose that's carried through the lineage.
Talking about lineages, Chris, tell us about the Swami order taking root in America. But what are they've certainly been adapted, hasn't it? The Varnashrama, as we call it, or no, it's not Varnashrama. Sorry, it's just the monastic, the stages of the monkhood, or joining the Swami order in self-realization fellowship. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was over 100 years ago that in July 1915, when Yogananda took his vows, after sort of asking Swami Sri Yukteswar multiple times, and he was initiated into the order. But in general, I was looking this up. You can get this on the yogananda.org website. There's 4 stages of monastic life in ashrams for SRF. And really dependent on one's commitment to the renunciant life and the monastic vows, the stages aren't fixed with any length. Really, it's to do with the potency of the commitment. So the first 2 are more of the novice entry level. You've got postulancy as the first, and it's really helping the renunciant gauge the depth of his or her desire to embrace the path of renunciation. The second stage of the novitiate is again a novice level expected. They're expected to demonstrate a growth of understanding, monastic discipleship. And then the third is, really when it starts to take some momentum on, the brahmacharya vow is it's the third stage, and it's a Sanskrit word that refers to the disciple and the discipline and self-control of one's thoughts and actions for the purpose of achieving union with the self and spirit. And this vow really signifies the disciple's deepening intention to remain in the monastic ashrams of SRF, and it's living by the 4 there's the 4 qualities of simplicity, celibacy, obedience, and loyalty till the end of life. So this is where they get the family name is dropped, and they start to use the title of brahmachari or brahmacharini for the females. And then the final stage is the sannyas. So that is
yes.
Sorry. That's the pronunciation, correct pronunciation there. And it represents the renunciant's total life commitment to God and Guru. So if you didn't know those 4 stages, that's 4. I wasn't entirely familiar with them. So it's nice to look at them. And that's the overview. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Chris. So sannyas is the one where the title brother or sister or ma or whatever is conferred amongst the self-realization fellowship monastics. I think that would be correct. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Hopefully one day, Chris, you'll become a monk. Or are you there? He's already there.
Never said.
Right, so let's go back. I promised that we would go back to Ananda Mata's memorial service. Apparently Ananda Mata said of Guruji, Guruji said, God has sent me angels. Then he would look at each of us and say, now you must all behave as angels. And Daya Mata in Ananda Mata's funeral tells us how we can do such a thing. She says, may God bless each one of you. And I ask one thing of you all, let this occasion change us. The examples of saintly lives are meant to change us, not someone else. Ask yourself, am I loving? Am I kind? Am I peaceful? Do I radiate compassion and love? That was Master. That is what all these have gone before us have taught. Rajarsi, Gyanamata, Durga Mata, Dr. Lewis, and others, and now our beloved Ananda Mata. No smallness of mind, and always thinking, what can I do to serve? The greatest joy that she knew, the greatest joy we all knew, was serving selflessly. Never the thought of me, me, me. When this I shall die, as Master said, then will I know who am I.
Beautiful.
Really good prayer. And Mike, would you want to finish with the Sister Gyanamata prayer that you beautifully found? Oh no, Chris has got something before. Chris.
Oh no, sorry.
Oh, you don't. Yes, please, Mike. Let us.
So this is a prayer that Sister Gyanamata wrote, and the inspiration was that she wanted to write it for other nuns that are in the ashram, and it is very humble, like she is, and it goes, "Teach me to meditate until I intuit thee. Teach me to pray until I find thee. Teach me to demand until I receive thy kingdom. Teach me to seek until I find thee. Teach me to love thee, whether it is thy pleasure to reveal thyself or not. Teach me to meditate until I feel thy bliss. Teach me to seek thee until thou dost answer. Teach me to feel thy peace until thou dost reveal thyself as bliss." Jai Guru.
Jai Guru. Jai Ma.